Even if you've never seen one of his videos before, Magnates Media is one of the top video essayist channels on the entire YouTube platform. He's generated hundreds of thousands of views each month because he uses the secret scriptwriting formula that beats 99% of YouTubers. And to save you the trouble of having to watch his videos to figure out this formula, I studied his top performing videos and broke down his scriptwriting technique into 3 different methods you can start using today. So I'm going to show you how he uses suspense to keep viewers curious for what's going to happen next, his strategy with hooks that breaks every YouTube rule that works amazingly, how he makes billionaires and famous business people feel like relatable characters you actually care about. And if you want to have a cheat sheet to apply these scriptwriting strategies to your own videos, then check out the link in the description for this free guide. Secret number 1, suspense. Creators tend to think that suspense is only meant for traditional media like movies or shows, but it's actually a strategic weapon that keeps people watching videos for long periods of time. A simple rule to creating suspense is to show the door, but hide the key. When you show the door, you present the viewer with context for what they know or are expecting what's to come, like what they first see in your title and thumbnail packaging, or what's said to them in the hook. But when you hide the key, you withhold the core information that will satisfy their curiosity. The viewer can see there's something behind the door, they know it's important, but they can't open it just yet, so they have to keep watching to find the key. Here's how Magnates Media does this. In the shocking truth of Ben & Jerry's video, there's a moment where Ben & Jerry start selling their product wholesale. Now see if you can tell what's hiding behind the door in this clip.
This was a big hit. But it also meant they had just made a powerful enemy.
He tells you they made an enemy, but did you notice what he doesn't tell you? Who this powerful enemy is behind the door? Who is the enemy? Is it another ice cream company? How could this enemy ruin their business? Well, you need to keep watching to get answers. Here's another clip from the same video when Ben and Jerry are in the situation when they're about to lose everything.
This was truly a David vs. Goliath situation, and without any distributors, it could be the end of Ben & Jerry's altogether. But then Ben had an idea.
And this makes you think, what idea could possibly save them and their business? Ben has an idea behind the door to get out of this problem. But what this doesn't give you is the key to showing what that idea actually is. Looking at these clips, there is a clear pattern that Magnates Media uses in his writing. Specifically, he uses these powerful transitions like, but then, unfortunately, however. These are words that signal you're about to learn that something happened, but not the what, why, how behind it happening. So how do you build this kind of suspense in your own videos? Let me show you the formula that Magnates Media uses to build suspense. First, identify your most interesting information. Before revealing anything, ask yourself what parts of the video create curiosity in the viewer that makes them ask follow-up questions. For example, instead of, they partnered with Pillsbury and Pillsbury tried to destroy them, you'd instead say something like, this was a big hit, but it also meant that they just made a powerful enemy. Then use transition words that build suspense. Just like Magnates Media, use simple phrases and transitions that can act as signals to create information gaps, such as, but then, there was one big problem, things are about to get much worse, and many more. Next, withhold the right details. And what are those details you'd withhold? Who? They made a powerful enemy, but don't say who. What? Ben had an idea, but you don't say what that idea is. Why? It became their nightmare, don't say why. How? It should backfire in a huge way, don't say how. And finally, the outcome. The company might fail, and don't say if it does. Finally, you want to pay off that suspense you built up quickly. The last thing you want to do is drag things out longer than they need to be, or people will quickly get annoyed or click off. Too many YouTubers make the mistake of building up suspenseful moments just to reveal the payoff way too late in the video when no one cares anymore. But suspense on its own isn't the only thing that makes Magnates Media videos addictive. He does something most creators rarely ever try, and that's why his intros are so effective in keeping people hooked. Anyone will tell you that the hook of video is one of the most important things for high retention, myself included, but there's a special type of hook known as the anti-hook that many expert YouTubers like Magnates Media are using without you even knowing. When you hear anti-hook, it sounds like the opposite of what it's supposed to mean. An anti-hook basically skips over describing the basic context of what your video is going to be about without a clear intro and jumps straight into poking at what will pique your curiosity. This type of hook specifically highlights parts of your story that may or may not seem essential or important at first. Traditional hooks tell you exactly what matters, in which, here's the 3-step formula that made him a billionaire. But anti-hooks do the opposite. They mention things that feel random, disconnected, or unimportant, like 2 kids failing gym class or a company facing lawsuits without explaining why these details matter. That randomness makes your brain go, wait, why are you telling me this? how does a gym class connect to a billion-dollar empire? And that question, that gap between what you're told and what it means, is what keeps you watching. Let me show you an example. For the video, the homeless teen who created Louis Vuitton, most YouTubers will probably open the video like this. The story of Louis Vuitton is extraordinary because someone goes from a homeless teenager to creating a billion-dollar fashion company. I'll go over his journey to success and the hostile takeover that nearly destroyed the company and other controversies people don't really know about. There's nothing exactly wrong with this hook, it's actually pretty decent, though it could be stronger, like how Magnates Media does this instead.
Louis Vuitton is a true rags to riches story, but the company would also be subject of a hostile takeover, countless lawsuits, and a host of other controversies.
Not only is his anti-hook short and to the point, but he's basically dropping a tension bomb on you without over-explaining. What hostile takeover? What lawsuits? What controversies? The first example outlines a simple roadmap of what's going to be talked about. The second one lists multiple things that still impact Louis Vuitton, even with the relatable rags to riches storyline. Now let's get into the application phase. First, stop over-explaining things. Here are a few red flags that signal you are over-explaining. I'm going to show you, here's how, I'll go over. These phrases are a few of many that absolutely kill your attention because you're adding more than what's necessary rather than getting to the point that was promised to them in your packaging. Next, look for moments of tension. Here are some questions that can help you identify these moments. What are the biggest conflicts? In this case, hostile takeovers and controversies. Are there any interesting things that can be compared and contrasted? For example, someone going from being homeless to being a billionaire. And if you can't identify any points of tension that can result in intrigue, then you're probably telling stories that will cause people to die of boredom and eventually quickly click off of your video. Finally, use an anti-hook template. Now that you've found tension talking points, you need to know how to form them into a perfect anti-hook. Here are a few ways Magnates Media uses anti-hooks in his videos and the simple templates you can use for your script. The first anti-hook formula is using contrast comparisons, especially if they're extreme or dramatic. Basically, look for something that's positive or successful, then transition into something negative or shocking. This results in a transformation that's going to take place in the video. Example, Louis Vuitton is the most valuable luxury brand on earth, but the man who started it was a 13-year-old runaway who spent 3 years sleeping in a forest. This anti-hook works because the gap between the two extremes is so massive that your brain demands to know how they're connected. The next anti-hook formula is using a cold open, also known as in media res. Normally, people think of pure B-roll and animations when it comes to using cold opens in videos, but that couldn't be further from the truth. All you need to do is take a specific moment from your story that'll grab attention and add minimal context. For example, in The Shocking Truth of Ben & Jerry's, Magnates Media immediately drops you into this immersive cold open that may seem irrelevant to the title, but keeps you wanting to understand why it is relevant in the first place.
It's the early 1960s, and two 12-year-old boys called Ben and Jerry are in gym class. Ben is arguing with the gym teacher, who's telling him he needs to run a mile in under 7 minutes. Meanwhile, Jerry is struggling so much, he faints. These two boys were called the slowest, fattest kids in class.
This simple formula involves setting an interesting or tense scene at a specific time or place without giving any initial context. And this works because you're dropped into a random scene with no idea why it matters. You watch to understand the connection. Lastly, another anti-hook that works extremely well and is one of the easiest to implement is conflict stacking. All you need to do is combine your points of tension and conflicts. And this works because you're not creating one question, you're creating multiple. Each conflict is a separate mystery that needs solving. Now on to our final secret that way too many creators are ignoring. When Magnates Media is telling you a story about a rich or famous person, of course he tells you about their background in depth, but he's also making viewers care about them and really see the human being behind the success. In every story, there's always a relatable character or person we're rooting for. As viewers of any piece of content, we're always seeking out these relatable characters because on some level, we empathize with what they may be feeling and relate our experiences to theirs. For example, in a Michelle Khare video, she isn't just attempting to do extreme challenges like training to be an Olympic boxer or attempting dangerous stunts to prove how successful she can be. Instead, she shows moments of vulnerability, especially when she's struggling from exhaustion or failing consistently. And in an Ali Abdaal video, he'll often mention how he suffered from imposter syndrome, procrastination, other insecurities despite his success as a YouTube entrepreneur, with his stories and advice relating to the viewer's own struggles. So why do these examples work? Because they show the gap between who these people appear to be and who they actually are. Michelle appears to be superhuman, attempting Olympic level challenges most of us would never dream of trying in the first place. When she shows herself exhausted, struggling, or failing, suddenly she's not as much of a superhuman anymore. She's just like us. Someone who gets tired, doubts themselves, and doesn't always succeed on the first try. That vulnerability creates connection. Same with Ali Abdaal. He appears to be the perfect productivity guru with millions of subscribers and a thriving business. But when he admits to procrastination and imposter syndrome, the exact same struggles his viewers face, he becomes relatable instantly. You think, wait, even he deals with this? Maybe I'm not so behind after all. We don't connect with people because they're successful. We connect with them because we see ourselves in their struggles. So here's how you can insert relatable characters into your own videos. First, get as specific as possible. Most creators say vague things like he struggled or times were hard. Magnates Media never does this. Instead of Louis Vuitton grew up poor and had to work hard, Magnates Media says, Louis would have been working in the fields every day from dusk till dawn just to make enough food to help feed his family. They had no electricity and no running water. See the difference? Not poor, then becomes no electricity, no running water. Not worked hard, becomes dusk till dawn in the fields. And not struggled becomes just to make enough money to feed his family. This works because specific details let you visualize the exact scene. You can picture a kid in a field at dawn. You can't picture struggled. You can do this by doing things like getting as specific with numbers, physical sensations like describing an empty stomach, concrete actions like he slipped out at midnight, slept in the woods. Again, getting as specific as possible. Next, show the transformation. Every relatable character needs a clear before and after journey. And this formula typically looks like before, rock bottom, after success, explicitly stating the change. Example from Louis Vuitton. Before, he was a 13-year-old runaway sleeping in forests with no money, and after, he was working a prestigious job among royalty. And the stated transformation is that Louis had gone from being a homeless teenager with nothing to his name to show, now working a prestigious job among royalty. And now do you notice the last sentence? Magnates Media doesn't just make you connect the dots, he tells you the transformation that happened. And in your case, for any person in your video, you'd write out where they started, being as specific as possible, again, where they ended up, and say out loud that they went from X to Y. Don't assume that viewers will figure it out, tell them directly. Finally, humanize them with flaws. Perfect people are boring. Show mistakes, vulnerabilities, and consequences that come from the choices we make. Show physical flaws. For example, in the Ben & Jerry's video, Ben had a condition that reduced his sense of smell and diminished his taste. Show mistakes, in which they signed a terrible contract because they didn't think bottling would work. And lastly, show emotions. Ben was very anxious about the deal, and Henry felt betrayed by the man he brought in to help him. And this works because flaws make them human. When you see someone's failures alongside their successes, they stop being a distant figure and become someone you can relate to. And so for the characters you write, always again include at least one physical flaw or limitation, mistakes that had real consequences, and emotional vulnerability, such as being anxious, afraid, or even betrayed. Now that you know the script writing secrets and formulas that Magnates Media uses to beat 99% of YouTubers, you're definitely going to want to watch this video that breaks down James Johnny's viral script formula.